NASCAR Championship weekend drawing nearer here to Phoenix Raceway. This is the Inside Lane. I am your host, Devon Henry, and digging into a little bit of the NASCAR playoffs is one of the Xfinity Series Championship contenders. Join us on the Inside Lane. He's a 2006 Formula TR 1600 Pro Series champion, a 10-time ARCA Menard Series winner, and right now he sits ninth in the NASCAR Xfinity Series playoffs. NASCAR on NBC analyst and the driver of the Big Machine Racing number 48 Chevy Camaro from Westport, Connecticut. It's Parker Kligerman. Parker, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, it's quite the intro. Thank you. I'm pumped up now. Appreciate all the accolade you found out.
Playoffs. It's time to be pumped up.
It is, man. It's cool. You know, I think we had a pressure-packed situation getting into the playoffs at Big Machine Racing. But we excelled in every facet of that pressure situation. And then, we're now in a pressure-packed situation to advance to the next round. And the other day, I was like, I think people might think I'm crazy, but I love this. Like, it's so cool. It's so cool where you get in that race car and every moment inside of it matters, right? Every little thing you do in practice to qualifying, to every decision you make in the race, every hit of the brake and smash of the throttle, gear shift, it all matters because you're fighting tooth and nail for a big prize. And it's so tight and so close, you just can't help but have to be perfect. And so I think it's such a cool situation to be in. I'm relishing it. And, as you mentioned, we're a championship contender. Hopefully we can take that all the way to Phoenix to be part of the championship four.
And with all that going on, of course, that's the mind of a race car driver, right? But 1 point below the cut line. Next up is out wild card at the Roval here in 2 more weeks. But between the racing, the reporting and analyzing on NASCAR and NBC, you're also in the moving. You're moving right now, and then of course you also have the money lap. And so, like the extra 1 hour of your day, is that when you sleep, or when does the sleeping happen for you?
It's not that bad. I mean, I've been able to manage the schedule fairly well. I think I've told a lot of people this, the time that I have to do all those other things is maybe the time that other people have hobbies and they go play golf or they get into something that's outside of their vocation. But for me, I love motorsports. And so everything I do is sort of centered around it, involved in it. I'm definitely, the entrepreneurial mindset of wanting to, create things and build things. And so, that's a passion for me. And it actually, a lot of ways, it may seem odd, but doing the Money Lab, which, the podcast and the newsletter, and a content producer, it might seem to people like work or just more motorsport stuff. But to me, it's that's a passion driven thing, right? I enjoy that. So it gets my mind off of racing and particularly driving, right? It makes me see the sport from a different angle. The same with TV. I think TV and the reporting and working at NBC is really cool because it gives me a higher, higher point of view, or sitting up there looking at the sport from an entirely different position than I would be as just a driver. So I think they all have actually help and advantages that they provide me. And therefore, people like to make that joke, when do you sleep and all those things. I'm someone who, I will say, I've said this to a lot of people. I've said it for a long time. I believe we all have a superpower, and mine is being able to operate at a high level on very little sleep. And it's just always been the way I've been.
That is quite the superpower, and I most certainly do not have that. But as you alluded to, you mentioned before, you don't really get to have a lot of hobbies because motorsports really is your life. But in pressure situations like this, 1 point below the cut line, going to maybe the wildest race in the entire playoffs for the Xfinity Series, how do you decompress? Or I guess if you did have time for hobbies, is there one that you thought that maybe you want to pursue?
Not yet. Nope. I want to keep doing what I'm doing. And I think that's the key, right? It's what got you here. You can't, one of the things I think was a real advantage for our race team was that we came into the playoffs in such a pressure-packed situation for the better part of 2 months that we raced every race like it was a playoff race and a cutoff race. And that's the mentality and the energy I brought into every race. And I look back at Daytona where we went into that in a really precarious position points-wise. But I basically convinced myself mentally that was a cutoff race, that I had to win that race to advance. It was the only way I felt like I could get myself in a locked-in mode to execute at a high level and take huge amounts of risk to keep us up front, which allowed us to finish in the top 5 and get the points we needed to eventually advance, right? I think that mentality, though, we carried in the playoffs, and therefore unlike some other teams, who had to suddenly jumpstart their energy or change what they're doing, we just kept doing what we're doing, right? And that's like, if we don't have the mechanical failure at Bristol, we're in the playoffs right now by probably 30, 40 points. So into the next round, so I think for me and for our race team, it's just keep doing what we're doing. That's the secret sauce. We've been able to, whatever's, sometimes when something's working, let it keep working, right? Don't change it. Let the engine keep going. Let it keep running, and see as far as you can take it until it runs out of fuel. But at this time, I feel like we have a lot of fuel in the tank, and if we just keep doing what we're doing and we bring that same mentality, execution, and speed into the Roval, we're gonna be just fine.
So, do you have a decompression method, or are you just going 120% 24/7?
Well, Netflix, Amazon, Peacock, streaming services. I think that's probably my biggest thing is like, I like to take an hour or two in the night to, tune out. And that might be watching a show. Sometimes my girlfriend is always trying to get me to read more books. A couple of years ago, I was great at reading books. I was getting one every couple of weeks done. And I've been way, way behind this year. But yeah, those two things, 8 o'clock pass at night. That's my decompression.
And you alluded to earlier the balance of working for NASCAR and NBC and then also now being a full-time racing driver as you're doing both at the same time. And I've always wondered, since you joined NASCAR and NBC, even when you weren't full-time, has that perspective that you were talking about kind of changed your perspective when you're in the cockpit and behind the steering wheel? Has that changed at all? Maybe not your approach, but just how you see your job when you're actually doing it.
It has. It really, really has. It's a great question. And I've talked about this a lot in the last couple of years because I really believe that doing TV gave me such a different perspective than just being a race car driver. One of the things that's really, really stuck out to me in the last couple of years is that when you're a driver full time, that's all you've known. You are very, and even crew chiefs and mechanics, that sort of thing, you are very focused on singular point of view, your race, your result, your team. That's all that matters, right? You're not looking at the bigger picture. You don't even care, to be honest. And then when you go to the TV side, suddenly you are put in a position where you have to think about and cover the entire field, right? 40 cars, 36 cars, and to know all of their stories intimately and to understand what each and every one of them is going through and where they are in their career, life, that season. And so it just forces you to have such a broader perspective that I think then shows you when you get back on the driving side, hey, what's important, what's not, right? What matters here, what doesn't. And so I really, truly believe it made me a better race car driver because I was able to really conceptualize what to focus on, how that's perceived and what not to worry about, right? And I think that's as important as anything. And TV really did that for me. So yeah, I think it's been a great lesson in my life, no matter, on the driving side, in life, just life in general, entrepreneurial pursuits. I feel like TV has been a hugely beneficial, experience for me. And I think I can take that in a lot of different facets in life.
And so on top of TV, you also have the Money Lap, and that's with Landon Castle. You two have a podcast that's a lot of fun together. Denny Hamlin has a podcast now. Kyle Larson with High Limits Racing. He's doing a podcast with his brother-in-law, Brad Sweet. I mean, for the first time ever, it feels like fans have an unprecedented amount of access into the driver's brains and into the cockpit, it feels like. So from that perspective, how do you think that podcasts like this are changing the sport, since we're seeing it in other sports too? But on top of that, for such really an intricate and very intimate sport, have you found any negatives yet as to having all those kinds of podcasts available to the fans?
I don't think there's a negative. I think it's a changing of the media landscape, right? There is no longer the de facto sole source of sports news, or no matter what media you consume, right? It's fractionalizing and niching down, and it's becoming, very I wouldn't say full, because I do believe that there's not even close to enough content out there, right? I don't think until we hit where you are making this radio show for one specific person, and that's all that matters, and that's the only audience member that you have, and it's the only person that matters, that's the level where we'll probably be at too much content. But until that point, as long as you have an audience available that's interested in what you're trying to make, I don't think you can make enough of it. And I think as a sport, it's an amazing time because it's giving the stars of the sport a voice, an outlet. It's giving their fans, as you put an intimate view into their mindset and their day-to-day lives. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it's necessary in a lot of respects because we don't have that sole place that people go for everything anymore, right? But I also think it's the modern way, and the positives far outweigh the negatives. Is there going to be moments like Denny had earlier this year getting penalized and that sort of thing? Sure. But you know what? That is I don't know if you'd say it's a small price to pay, but it is a small price to pay for us on the outside for, the level of insight you're going to get that you just wouldn't have had 20 years ago. You wouldn't have had this opportunity to listen to people and really sort of, I guess, get the inside, not scoop, but like the inside thought process of these athletes at this level.
Well, one small payment for the greater good, I guess, right? With the But real quick, I do want to look ahead to NASCAR Championship weekend, November 3rd through the 5th. Hope to see you there with a purple banner on top of that car. But from both the driver's perspective and the TV analyst perspective, your thoughts on NASCAR Championship weekend at Phoenix Raceway. And we already know we're going to be back in 1 year's time again, too, at Phoenix.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place for a finale. That facility, they've done a lot with that facility, and it's really impressive. And I love that championship weekend, the way they really have it's surrounded by fans of the grandstands and then all the clubs off of turn 4, or now it's turn 2, sorry. And the different hospitality areas. And I just think they've done a really great job with that racetrack and that facility. And it's a facility, that is of the level of a championship finale, right? I do think it's really cool also to see the amount of fans that show up there. When you go see the camping grounds at Phoenix on championship weekend, I'm always amazed. I'm like, this place is packed. It's like every single person who bought a ticket must be camping here as well. So it's really a cool place for that. It's a fitting place for finale. The weather's obviously usually great, which is awesome. I think that's a key part to that. But I enjoy that racetrack. It's a place I haven't been super successful at yet, but I learned so much earlier this year and worked so hard at getting better at it that I truly believe if we can make the championship 4, we can be a threat.
This weekend going to Talladega in the Craftsman Truck Series, then back to the Xfinity playoffs at the Roval in 2 weeks' time. Parker, appreciate all of your time, not just here with me, but what you do for all the fans at the podcast, TV, social media. So you're a great asset to the sport and all of the fans. So thank you for your time. Hope to see you fight for a championship here in Phoenix.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, Devin. This was fun. And thank you all the fans for their support. We're doing big things at Big Machine Racing. We're going to keep the show rolling.
This is the Inside Lane. Be sure to keep it right here at Sports 360 AZ. NASCAR Championship weekend on the way. Plenty more content and racing action coming up here on the Inside Lane.